Taking picture of aurora with this kind of zoom is something I have never ever think about before. Is this lens the number one choice for those who want to carry only one lens and one camera body? Here I have the new zoom lens from Tamron, the 35 to 150mm f2 to f2.8. And I'm so excited to try this lens because there is so many situations when you don't want to carry a lot of stuff. You want to do a day trip up in the mountains, you want to hiking around in the forest, and you don't want to have a heavy bag full of camera equipment. You only want to go with one camera lens. And this can really be the number one choice in those situations. But I have tried this lens now many days out in the field, and before I tell you something about the results and before I'll show you some of my pictures, I want to make something clear for you. When it came to camera lenses, you have prime lenses and you have zoom lenses. And if we speak about prime lenses, it's a fact that it's more easy to design a prime lens than a zoom lens, because a zoom lens is a much bigger compromise than a prime lens. So you can most of the time find prime lenses that have absolutely perfect image quality, and you can also find a little bit cheaper prime lenses and the quality is still wow. And when it came to zoom lenses, because it's a bigger compromise, it's more tricky to design a zoom lens and get that perfect image quality. But I cannot tell you that prime lenses is better than zoom lenses, because it depending on what you compare. And the zoom lenses nowadays are actually so good. Some of them is so good, so it's impossible for a human eye to tell, is this photo taken with a zoom lens or with a prime lens? You must open the photo in Photoshop, you must zoom in the corners, you must check every pixel for figure it out. So I cannot tell you that prime lenses is better than zoom lenses, but I can tell you that designing a zoom lens is a much bigger challenge. And if we then speak about zoom lenses, because this is a zoom lenses, then we have those normal, typical zoom lenses with a normal like focal area range, for example 24-70, you have 16-35, you have 70-100, and then we have those kind of zoom lenses that have even wider span, and we used to call them super zooms. And this zoom have the focal area from 35 to 150mm. I mean, it's huge. 35mm on a full frame camera, it's a wide angle focal length. It's not super wide, but it's still wide angle. And if you go all the way up to 150mm, you are in the category for a telephoto focal length. So this is basically a wide angle lens and a telephoto lens in one lens. So design one lens like that. If I tell you that it's a challenge to design a zoom lens, it's I don't know how many times bigger challenge to design a lens like this. So I'm really excited to see how this lens is going to perform out in the field. And when I get this lens in my hand, one of the first thing I want to try is how is this lens going to be when I'm shooting wide open and in the end of the focal length area. Wide open on 150 and wide open on 35. And I want to figure that out, because to have a zoom lens like this, and that is f2 to f2.8, I mean f2, it's amazing for this focal length area. To have a lens with that big aperture, it means that you have a lens that is bigger and more heavy than if it was f4. I don't want to say that this lens is neither big, it's neither heavy, but it's bigger and heavier than if you have a f4 lens. So I want to figure out, is it worth the extra weight to carry around this lens? Forget that f2 to f2.8 aperture. And is it also going to deliver perfect image quality, wide open, in the end of the focal length area? There is two things that is really important for me when it came to taking photos. The first thing is image quality. And I cannot say that I'm in some way is some kind of technical nerd that I must have the latest stuff, the coolest stuff, the most expensive stuff, you know, and so on. But I must have something that deliver really, really good image quality. Because I spending hours, days, weeks out in the field. I mean, it's plenty of time and energy I put behind every photo. And I don't want to be out in minus 20 degrees, 3 days sleeping in a tent waiting for an animal. And when the animal finally come there, I take a photo. When I'm coming home, I see, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's okay. I mean, there is nothing for me that is, it's okay, it must be perfect, every time it must be perfect, because there is so much time behind it. So good image quality is absolutely the number one thing for me. And the second thing is that when I'm out taking photos, I cannot take in photos just for taking photos. I must do it because I want to do it, it's fun, and it must also give me something back to doing it. And when I'm, for example, out for taking landscape photos, I'm hiking around in nature, I want to be in the moment. I want to think about nothing else. When I see something, I want to lift up my camera, I want to capture it on a photo. Because that is the way that inspiring me to taking photos. I can take my bag off, I can take out another camera lens, I can switch lens on the camera. I mean, it's a 30-second thing, 45-second thing. But that's really the limit for me, because when I'm inspired to do something, if I'm hiking around in the nature, see something that makes me inspired, I want to lift up the camera, I want to take the photo. I don't want to start struggling with technical things and too much things around that, because then I lose the motivation. So this lens really offer me so much when I'm out in the nature. Because with this lens I can hiking around and I can shooting from 35 to 150 millimeter. That is for me the perfect focal length area. So this lens really gave me one of the most important thing when it came to taking photos. And as I say before, we speak about prime lenses, and that prime lenses, that it's a fact that it is more easy to design a prime lens with better image quality. Yes, it is. But this lens can deliver something that prime lenses cannot. And this lens can deliver the pleasure to be out and have the opportunity to just hiking around, just taking photos of whatever you see without changing lens. You don't even need to think about it. You're walking around with your camera and enjoying fooling out. A prime lens is for sure sharper than this lens in many situations. But if I then tell that this lens is softer than a prime lens, it doesn't mean that this lens is soft. I mean, softer and soft is two different things. This lens might be softer, but is still very sharp. So the focal length area that this lens offer, and together with the perfect image quality that this lens also offers, it's really a big yes for me. This is the absolute number one lens to carry when I want to hiking around with only one lens. I have standing on the lake in the middle of the night in minus 22 degrees, taking photos of the Aurora Borealis on 35 f.2 with this lens. With a super zoom lens. I have never ever even think about using a super zoom lens for taking that kind of photos. But it's possible because it's sharp on 35 f2 wide open. It's sharp. It's really sharp. So it's absolutely possible. And with same lens, the next day, I have shooting picture of the moon. And of course, the moon is not, I mean, it's not crazy huge, but still, 150 millimeter on my full frame camera, if I shooting in crop mode, in APS-C mode, that will give me a 225 millimeter focal length, and I still have more than 24 megapixel left. And 225 millimeter, it's a lot for have the moon as an important ingredient in the photo. So with the same lens, I shooting night sky, aurora borealis, and I shooting landscape photos with the moon and everything like there between. And that is something that you cannot find in so many lenses. Here I am standing and taking picture of the aurora with one new zoom lens from Tamron, the 35 to 150 millimeter. And taking picture of aurora with this kind of zoom is something I have never ever think about before. But this zoom lens, even that it's a 35 to 150 millimeter, it's f2 to f2.8, so I will give it a try. If you speak then about the bad things, the minus, the negative things, I mean, this lens is not big, it's not heavy, but it's still a lot of weight to hanging in your camera. So I wish it was possible to attach it to the tripod. If you, for example, do long exposure shots, you don't want to have too much weight hanging in your camera because you don't want that risk that the tripod head start to flip. So that is one minus. And then I have also noticed that in some situations it's a little bit sensitive for overexposing, and I cannot answer why, because I don't have that answer. But I have noticed that if I'm taking photos in the way I used to do with all my other lenses, if the sky is bright, I mean it's white sky, you have white snow, you have white everything, if I overexpose just a little bit, I lose image quality. If we speak about the good things with this lens, it's of course the biggest benefit with this lens is that it have a focal length area from 35 to 150 millimeter, and you can use the area fully out. It delivers perfect image quality all the way from 35 to 150. And you can also shoot wide open on f2 to f2.8 without losing image quality. That's the absolutely main benefit with this lens. Then the autofocus, it's fast, it's quiet, and it's also very accurate. The background blur is very soft, so it's, I mean, there is a lot of good things with this lens.